In this video, I want to put together my response and talk through how I formulated it to the practice question that you've been given. So the details of the question are that you've been given some information about a financial planning firm in North Lakes, and there are some issues around ethics. You're given a bunch of details, not all to do with the ethics, so money stolen from the petty cash tin, details of the profitability of the firm, overcharging, the ATO with the problem there, staff talking about money, an indication perhaps a past of their culture, the boss very rarely being at the office, lack of community work, a high turnover of clients, and an interesting policy of employing only staff with high levels of qualification. So you're given this information about the firm and you're asked to do 3 different tasks. The first one is to create a SWOT analysis with the information provided. So SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. One thing I often talk about when I look at the SWOTs that we do in class is they tend to be a little bit airy-fairy. Right? They don't tend to have the level of substance they think they should. So what I've done to start with is I've copy and pasted into the right-hand column some of the things we can talk about when we talk about strengths and weaknesses. So they're the internal things, the people, the communication, the products, the finance, the knowledge. So having got those things there, we can use those to prompt us to put issues in the firm. So for the strength, I said that we do have very highly qualified staff, right? They all have master's degrees. But a weakness with the people is there's unethical conduct in the firm. Communication would seem to be fairly poor. It talks about just the boss coming in, people being focused on money. So it doesn't suggest there's a good quality of communication. Even staff, even clients leaving is not a good indication of communication. Some of the strengths, we talk about the finance. Right? The business is quite profitable and the profit is growing over the past 2 years, which is a positive thing. So there's a few issues that we've managed to identify there straight away. Perhaps a weakness is also the focus of the ATO on auditing or watching the business. So we've got a few things without having to work too hard there. We now move ourselves to the external things, which are the opportunities and threats. Again, I've put down the right-hand side just some of these dot points that we can always use when we're doing a SWOT analysis. We can talk about the market, technology, economic climate, competitors, government rules. So some of the opportunities is we know in North Lakes that it's a market that's growing. So that's a positive thing. It's increasing and more people like to be looking for advice in the area. Technology is going to make doing that style of business more efficient, even something as simple as being able to contact people through email. And there's a chance to increase profitability because it is profitable at the moment. If we can find our way to keep our clients that are leaving at a faster than average rate, that's going to improve things. But there are threats. So people might be more likely to invest. So by that I mean look for financial planning advice if there is a period of poor investment returns. There are likely to be more competitors. Coming into the area, and that's a negative thing. There are governments that might impose taxes that make the business less attractive. For example, if there was a tax on investment earnings, so people would be less likely to invest with a financial planning firm. We know that one of the threats is that there is a higher than average rate of clients leaving the firm. Mind you, that's also an opportunity because if we can stop that, it's already profitable. And the ATO is watching the business. That's not a good thing. And we've got issues around the reputation. It's kind of a threat. It's also a weakness, you might say, the fact that it is a poor business reputation. And that's always an important one. So there we go. We've got a SWOT analysis done fairly quickly. That's fairly sophisticated. The next thing we look at are the stakeholders, key stakeholders. And remember, when we're thinking about what stakeholders are, these are people who are impacted by business, going beyond just shareholders. So some of the stakeholders we might look at might include clients. So how are they impacted? Well, they're being overcharged in fees. They might lack confidence in the business. They're obviously leaving the business, which causes them some inconvenience and some costs, and they may be at risk of being caught into any action that the ATO might take. The staff and owners, so the business is not running as well, and so that creates a risk. For example, there's a risk eventually that staff might lose jobs. The government, well, they might be interested in trying to get back some money that they think they're owed. And competitors, they might be interested in the fact that if the business fails, or it's not doing such a good job, there might be an opportunity to take clients from this business. And the community, at the moment, they say they don't do any community engagement work at all. Plus, a good professional services firm, like a good financial planning firm, will be good for the area. And at the moment, they don't have that. Now, at this stage, if you were doing the answer, you'd then be looking to these two bits of analysis to pull out the key issues. So probably the key issues I think that come out of that are the ATO, looking at the business, that's not a good thing. Clients leaving the business at a high rate, that's not a good thing. But the firm still being profitable is very, very important. And you might add to the fact that it's a growing area, and then you get a good balance between some of the challenges and some of the opportunities in the business. We didn't ask for that in this, but it's important to know that would be the step. The third question, if you were to go ahead and purchase the business, how would you put together a plan to improve the business, address the issue of corporate culture? And corporate culture would seem to be the key issue here, so we can really focus on that. Now, I've started by just jotting down the different bits of theory that I wanted to look at. So routines are important in corporate culture, right? So the source of that is from those other readings I gave you. In terms of changing, creating a sense of urgency, forming a guiding coalition, and embedding the change in culture are three really important things that Cotter talks about. So I'd like to touch on those three things. To change culture, there are 4 different things that the textbook suggests that I think are really important here. So I'm going to touch on those. And they are training staff with the culture in mind, culture of ethics, recruiting with the culture in mind, management providing an example of culture in action, and management clearly communicating the desired culture. Okay. So how can we go about making this change, building an ethical firm? What are the recommendations? So I've started by saying the first step I would suggest is to consider and communicate the issue of ethics with urgency, explaining the current unethical behaviours putting the business at risk. I would suggest a meeting with all staff to address this matter and explain the seriousness. So that's looking at creating a sense of urgency and starting to talk about what change needs to be made. The next step, using theory from Cotter's change management, is to put together a team to help change the culture. This would include staff at different levels in the organisation. There are 4 key steps that theory suggests are important in changing the culture of an organisation, including training, recruiting, management actions, and management communicating the desired culture. So I've started to touch on the first steps and the theory I'm going to go on to. So it says, while recruiting is an important part of a culture change, this situation is serious, and I recommend offering an incentive to any staff who want to leave because they felt they could not work with the new culture. This is similar to the $5,000 bonus offered to Amazon.com to leave if they don't feel they fit with the organisation. I should put in here the benefit of this is that it would get rid of staff whose values are inconsistent with the desired culture of the organisation. Okay. Then you might put future recruitment would focus on hiring people with a strong ethical focus. So we've actually talked at exactly what we're going to do in that situation around recruiting. We've also very importantly used an example. Examples are very, very strong. So we've talked about an Amazon.com example. Then we move on and say training could be done on a weekly basis. And then we start to bring in this idea of routines. Routines can be very important in changing the culture of an organisation. So explaining that there, perhaps even being a little bit clearer. would create a culture that included consideration ethics, because you're being trained on those regularly. And then the last one is this idea that one way to change the culture is management provide an example of the culture in action. And because the management hasn't been in the business very much, that's something that they'll be able to do fairly comfortably from now. So that gives you the way I've tackled those answers. They tend to be probably, I think, around a B level. Things you could do to improve the responses would be to include a few more examples, be a little bit more specific about where the theory actually comes from, so it's clear which theory you're using, and use a little bit more theory from outside just the core course that we've done.